Olin Buchanan joining us from TexAgs.com, columnist covering Texas A&M athletics. Olin, appreciate your time today. So we got a week until, less than a week until SEC Media Days. The excitement is building for everybody to get together and talk about what this next season is going to look like. But let's do that a little bit ahead of here. So expectations are pretty big for the Aggies, it would seem, after a really solid 2020 campaign. Well, would you say these are the highest expectations that Jimbo Fisher has had since his time in Bryan College Station?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, last year they thought they might be pretty good if you know a few question marks were answered positively. That's still the case this year. There's some reason for apprehension at quarterback and offensive line, but when you look at the team and what they were able to accomplish last year, going 9-1 and finishing fourth in the country, and then also having so many players back, 6 offensive and 9 defensive starters back, you know, there's obviously a lot of reason to feel optimistic. And I think if you talk to the average Aggie fan, they're expecting, you know, or at least aiming for, you know, a 10-win season and maybe more.
They definitely should be because of the season y'all had last year. Obviously, there's question marks at the quarterback position. Who's the front runner to replace Kellen Mond, and is he going to be able to kind of match the productivity that we saw from Kellen last year?
Yeah, well, whoever it is, I think it'd be unfair to expect him to match the productivity of Kellen. You know, as the guy who's in his fourth year and third year as a starter, and whoever it's going to be his first year as a starter. I think most of us believe that Haynes King, he's a second-year player out of Longview, Texas, really fast, has a good arm, not necessarily a great arm, but really fast and athletic. And from everything we've heard, has a great grasp of Jimbo Fisher's offense. But Fisher told us that he felt like the competition got closer in the spring because of Zach Calzada played so well. Not anything that Haynes King didn't do well, but that Zach Calzada, who's a third-year player from Georgia and who does have the big, strong arm. He's not as athletic as Haynes, but you know, he's got a rifle. So you know, I think that's the competition that's going to go into late August. Before Jimbo makes a decision, he always says the team's going to will tell him who that starter is. But I think they feel, you know, both of them have great ability and they're optimistic about them. But you know, until you actually go out there and play well in SEC competition, I think there has to be a certain amount of apprehension, no matter, you know, how highly touted you are.
We're going to be practicing against one of the best defenses in the country for certain. And I mean, if there's one thing the Aggies will be able to hang their hat on, it's Mike Elko's defense. And I mean, we had a guest on yesterday that talks about people will push the idea of returning starters so often, but you have to look at what you're returning. They're returning 9 players off of already one of the best defenses in the country. So it feels like that's a position, or at least a side of the line of scrimmage where the Aggies may even. Is there a chance they could be better defensively than we saw last year?
Yeah, I think it could be potentially. Now they were 9th in the country in total defense, so you're expecting a lot. But that was 9th in the country. You know, facing Kyle Trask, Mac Jones, and Sam, the guy from North Carolina, for some reason, his name is escaped. Sam Howell, yeah. So, and they do have a lot of guys back. I think the Marvin Leal defensive end is going to be one of the better players in the country. I think Jalen Jones, who started at cornerback as a freshman, is a guy that's really going to turn heads and get a lot of attention. And I do think they'll have a better pass rush than they had last year and probably be better in the secondary. But the fact remains that the one guy that you really lost that's going to be hard to replace, Buddy Johnson, the inside linebacker. I thought he had an all-conference caliber season. But he's not just a talent. It wasn't just a talented player. He's that, heart and soul kind of guy, leader, and everybody follows him. Leader and vocally as well as by example. And they've got some guys they feel good about. Andre White, a kid out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, in his third year. You know, he's played well as a backup, and they got a kid out Edrin Cooper out of Louisiana, that's a second-year guy that's really fast. They really love him. But until they go out there and play, and I think whoever replaces Buddy Johnson may even have a bigger task of replacing him than Kellen Mond's replacement has. So he was that important to the defense. So until they see somebody that can go out and be that guy in the middle of the defense that can get everybody lined up and make plays, I think you're really asking for a lot to say they'll be better than they were last year.
Yeah, and Olin, I was reading some of your stuff off of TexAg.com, and you talked about in one of the articles about optimism as far as the offensive line goes. When you're having to replace, you only have one returning starter on the O-line, you're having to replace four key guys on a football team. Why is Jimbo Fisher and everybody very optimistic that four new guys are going to come in and be able to protect who's ever in the backfield?
Yeah, well, first of all, let's remember that this time last year, the big question mark about A&M was their offensive line, because it had struggled the year before, and it was in its first year under Josh Henson when it struggled, and then with a year, I guess, to get used to him and what he's asking for, you know, those guys got better. Now, the one guy coming back is the best guy. He was an All-American, Kenyon Green, and he's shifting from left guard to left tackle, which is his natural position. But the reason that they feel like there's a chance to be as good is that every player that's going to step in is more physically talented. These are all 5- and 4-star guys. If you buy into those ratings, and all the guys at A&M lost up front were 3-star guys. And now, so we say physically or individually, each player is probably more talented. But of course, the question is, can you play as a unit as well as that team did? Because they were all very experienced. If you ran a twist and stunts, they were very adept at understanding who you pass off to and who picks up this guy and that guy. And on running plays, you know, very adept at making your block and then getting off and getting the next guy. But again, these guys have had a long time now being coached under Josh Henson, Josh Henson, and more physically gifted. So on by that basis is why you say, well, they could be, you know, as good, but they've got to prove that they can play as a unit as well as that unit did, and that won't be easy.
Olin Buchanan joining us from TexAgs.com. Olin, there have been some columns written recently, and even some of our listeners in previous years have brought this up, of the idea that Arkansas should move to the Big 12. It's closer geographically. They'll win more football games, this and that. And you end up finding out that, you know, why would Arkansas want to be in a league where you've got to deal with Texas, how they rule over everything in the Big 12? You know, and look, everybody in this league in the SEC will go on and on about Alabama. This is still a league that still kind of operates a little more like a league than the Big 12 does. As a school that is still fresh away from the Big 12. I know it's been a while, but it in the grand scheme of things, it hasn't been that long. Nobody ever says Texas A&M ought to go back to the Big 12, right? Because the Aggies already are aware what it's like to play in a league where you have a school like Texas that just is the elephant in the room, and you wouldn't want to go back to that.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, it seems to me, and you guys would know this better than me, that it's not necessarily the people in Arkansas saying that. I mean, I'm saying, do you want to live in the cheapest house? And just making this as a analogy, do you want to live in the cheapest house in the swankiest neighborhood, or do you want to live in the best trailer in the trailer park? And that's kind of what you're talking about if you want to go back from the SEC to the Big 12. I think Arkansas has proven that it can win in the SEC. So why go back? Yeah, you're having some hard times right now. Part of that was some bad luck with coaching and hiring some guys that maybe were over their heads or had a philosophy that just wasn't going to work. But you know, if you get the right guy, Arkansas can be very competitive. And quite frankly, who knows? Maybe you have the right guy now. I'll say this, from an outsider looking in, it looked like Sam Pittman came in and just by common sense moves made Arkansas better right away. So I don't know why you'd want to go back to the Big 12 and having, like you said, Texas dictate things. And quite frankly, A&M hasn't won a conference championship in the SEC. Probably could have won 2 or 3 conference championships had they remained in the Big 12. And they look forward to competing in the SEC with no regrets.
And there is a but here. The Texas A&M's entry into the SEC coincides with this downturn of Arkansas football, and I think you hit it more on what it's about. Of course, it's about the coaches. It's about Petrino to John L. Smith. Nobody would have figured out that things worked out with Bielema the way it did. Chad Morris obviously was a complete disaster, and now you're rebuilding up. At the same time, 9 straight losses for Arkansas to Texas A&M, and they've come in every different flavor, every different size, every different way. So, Olin, when people will ask you, is this the year? They mean, is this the year that the Aggies will beat Alabama, win a division championship, you go from there. When you say here in Arkansas, is this the year, and you may be realistic about things, the people would give their left arm to end the losing streak against the Aggies. I think more than anything, you'd love to beat Alabama again. You probably want to be a little more realistic about things. They can beat A&M. Is this the year that happens?
Man, I didn't know there was so much venom up there. I'll put it this way. If I had to bet my salary on the A&M and Alabama game today, I would still take Alabama because A&M's got to prove that they can do it before I'm going to, completely buy in. And if I had to make that same bet on the A&M Arkansas game, I would take A&M because, quite frankly, I do think this A&M team is better than any A&M team since 2012. Or potentially is better. And there's been a lot of those years where, let's face it, A&M didn't win it against Arkansas as much as Arkansas gave it away. But I think you're seeing A&M playing better football right now, and I think you'll see Arkansas playing better football. But as of today, without hoping not that I don't sound like a homer, I think objectively, I think A&M has more talent, and I'll go with talent over potential.
I don't think you sound like a homer. I think that's honestly where we are right now, and hopefully by the time the game is played in a few months, that the gap might be a little bit closer there, Olin. But I know you've probably been asked this 1,000 times joining other radio stations around the country when A&M is brought up, especially in the last few weeks with NIL. Could you think of a number high enough that Johnny Money Manziel would have made with NIL at Texas A&M?
Oh gosh, probably as much as he's made without it. I don't know. If he could have done everything above board and signed autographs, he could. I'll tell you this: he's got a good relationship with one of our owners, Billy Lucci, and when he a couple of years after his NFL career ended and he was going to try to make a comeback, he had a bunch of merchandise, hoodies and sweaters and T-shirts, and made a public appearance one day to sell them on a cold day in February. And we had lines coming in our office that was wrapped around our office. And we have a pretty big office building in a strip mall type thing. And he was here for, I think, 8 hours, because people get the picture taken with him. I don't know what he made that day, but I bet he made $200,000 that day.
Wow.
So, if he could have sold things, yeah, he could have made $1 million. I have no doubt in my mind.
Dang. Makes sense. Really.
Yeah, it does.
Your nickname's Money, or Johnny Football, I guess. Olin, appreciate you, man. It was fun talking football with you. Let's do it when the season comes up, when we get close to that Southwest.
Hey, let's do it
Classic.
next week.
Yeah, next week. That's right, in Hoover. Exactly. He's exactly right about that. And
hey, thanks for having me on, fellas.
Thanks,
you got
Olin.
it. All of our shows are going to be in Hoover next week. Halftime, Ruskin and Zach, Morning Rush, all on Radio Row right there in Hoover at SEC Media Days. It's presented by Our Best Bank, Ozark Orthopedics, and Construction Masters Roofing. Just go to hitthatline.com all next week for even more coverage from SEC Media Days. We'll wrap up the first hour after the break. 877-377-6963. You want to hear a frightening thought? I worked in food service once. French fry cook at a water park in Pittsburgh. It is National French Fry Day. Don't eat my food. At least not mass. You can come over and eat. We'll come back after this.